Good evening, audience. Welcome to the next episode of the Gospel of Cleasy. This is your boy, D Freezy, aka Cleasy for Sheezy. And so let's talk about the happenings over the past week. I think everybody, most of the industrialized world was tuned into a event that was labeled as a boxing match on Friday, which would have been the 15th, I believe. That's not, hold on a second. Yeah, Friday the 15th. Mike Tyson, 58-year-old Mike Tyson fought a much younger Jake Paul in an exhibition bout, if you want to call it that. And Jake Paul won by unanimous decision, I believe. Many of us were expecting, hoping, living in hopes that we would see the Mike Tyson of the early 90s. But, Father Time is undefeated. So we saw a 58-year-old Mike. And I would venture to guess, I haven't seen any details of the contract, but Mike really didn't lay a glove on Jake Paul. Anything that would come close to anything that we saw from Mike Tyson in his prime, but they danced around. Roy Jones Jr., Rosie Perez, and some WWE guy who I don't know were uh, commentating during the bout, and they, Roy Jones kept reminding the audience that something looked wrong with Mike's legs. Mike just didn't, I think he thought maybe threw one punch that maybe had a little bad intention behind it, but other than that, I didn't see very many punches thrown. Jake Paul, he ducked in, and to be able to say he could hit, he hit Mike, but he didn't stay around to, he didn't go toe to toe with him by any means. So I think the best fight of the night was the fight between the two females. Katie Taylor, I believe her name is, and I don't know the other young lady's name, but she is of Puerto Rican descent. In my mind, she won, but she had to fight through headbutts from Katie that some people say were dirty. Um, I'll let you make your judgment on that, but in my mind, having that, and she threw as many punches as she took. I would have to give the edge to the Puerto Rican sister, and I can't remember her name. Pardon me for that. And the big thing was, Mike Tyson. Mike had his whole ass out too. He did an interview right before the fight and with his son, and when he turned around, we had all butt cheeks, and I was like, whoa. I don't think anybody saw that coming. Rosa Perez said we could do without that, but it was too late. The buffering first sporting. No, I don't know if it's the first sporting type event on Netflix, but many people were complaining about the buffering, and it was a little choppy in the first. Oh, and then it was about before the females, two YouTubers. Man, I'm not a boxing expert, and I've never been a boxer. I have watched boxing since I was very young, and have always been a fan of the sport. Uh, I I can name off a lot of boxers that I'm fans of that are older that many people may not know. Mark Breland was one of my favorites out of New York. Pernell Whitaker out of the Tidewater area. Sweet Pea. Sugar Ray Leonard for sure. Thomas Hearns. No, yeah, Thomas Hearns, Marvin Hagler. I come from that era where, uh, of course, Muhammad Ali, Larry Holmes. Who else can I think of just off the top of my head? So I love the sport. Lennox Lewis. Uh, yeah, I love the sport. I've watched it most of my life, childhood and adulthood. If it's a good fight, if I think it's a good fight, but we are moving into a different era where influencers are moving into the sporting space and claiming themselves as something. And I'm gonna say right now, Jake Paul is not anything in my mind when I think about a fighter. Anything, he doesn't have the chops to be able to call himself a boxer in the same way that you know Hector Camacho or Roberto Duran or any legends of the sport would call themselves, right? Floyd Mayweather, Bernard Hopkins, Roy Jones Jr. These guys who I consider boxers. You know, and it was an entertainment thing. It definitely was not a serious fight, because no 20-year-old man should be fighting a 58-year-old man, almost 60-year-old man. And you know, Mike was paid $20 million for the bout, from what I understand. Jake Paul was paid 40, and I almost feel like it was give Mike $20 million to um, tarnish his legacy, because I can't count anybody's money. I don't know Mike's financial situation. $20 million is a lot of money to me. I'm not going to pretend it's not, but it. I was happy that kids that have never seen Mike fight got a chance to actually see him fight. But that's not the Mike Tyson. When we talk about people from my era, when he was the youngest unified heavyweight champion, the Mike Tyson we saw Friday night was not that Mike Tyson by any stretch of the imagination. And I was cautiously optimistic. One of my friends who's very intelligent and usually on point, he said, don't get your hopes up, and he was absolutely right. But I guess after the preceding week, I needed a win, and I just needed Mike to be Mike one night, but it wasn't meant to be. So, respecting Mike Tyson, he is a Hall of Famer. He's one of the most vicious and devastating punches I've ever seen in the history of the sport. When he was in his prime, most of his early matches didn't make it out of the first round. You had to be there when it started, or else you would miss it. And that's not an exaggeration. But yeah, so that happened, and then and they had two YouTube influencers or somebody fighting in the first match, and it was one was from Brazil and one was from India, and I think the one from India won, but it was like you could tell these people are not boxers. Like they went in the gym and put on some gloves for the first time when all this came about. They have not been doing this all their life. They didn't grow up in golden gloves and all that type of stuff. You can tell, and that's the era we live in now. It's all about style, no substance. It's sad, and I guess we just have to see what comes next. But I would like to see Jake Paul fight somebody who is a boxer and then not retired and is his age. The brother's name escapes me now that Cameron and Mace were talking about. Um, he's Hispanic, but I can't remember his name right off the top of my head. Tank might be a little too small for Jake Paul. Jake Paul's a big guy, uh, but somebody of that caliber of you know Tank Davis's caliber, or Crawford or somebody like that. I like to see him fight somebody like that, and then he can call himself a boxer. But he made $40 million. You can't don't hate the player, hate the game. So that was what happened this past week. That was you know unusual. Doesn't happen every day. We had been waiting for this. Mike had some health issues in the summer that Mike Tyson had some health issues in the summer that prevented him from the fight from happening earlier. So the fact that Mike got $20 million and he didn't get hurt, I'll take as a win. Respecting Mike Tyson. I love you, I always will, always have, always will. Um, so about 10 days past the 2024 presidential election, we'll go ahead and just get into that. People maybe have not, people have had time to process it and really, I guess, go through the 5 stages of grief. For those of us who are unhappy, I would be included in that group. It happened. It happened. And I'm going to do something tonight that I don't normally do and speak on behalf of Black people. But I know, me personally, I think I'm in tune with my community enough to know that we're side-eyeing a few different groups of people now. I'm side-eyeing almost everybody that is not Black, and some that are Black. But it's not as many as they would have you believe. The people that you know, and I don't have any problem with anybody who supported the incoming administration and voted for that if that serves your interest. But um, we are not aligned politically, and it's no need for us to try to rationalize that which can't be rationalized. And so I won't be engaging in that. I said that I was going to do the podcast until Thanksgiving. Coming up on Thanksgiving, uh, then I'm going to take a hiatus until the beginning of the year. Uh, but when I come back, the format will change because it's politics, entertainment, and pop culture basically. It's definitely going to shift away from politics at the federal level because I really am not going to pay much attention because I'm not in favor of uh, the person who is in office. I did not vote for the person who will be inaugurated, and I expect it to be a damn dumpster fire. And all indications that I'm hearing now point to that fact. So I'm gonna let the people have spoken, the majority, and back to what I was saying, we're side eyeing a lot of people, in particular white women. We're really side eyeing white women as not all white women, but about what was it, 70% of white women, and white men we kind of knew, Hispanic men. And not all Hispanic men. I had Sister Alexandra, and I call her sister because I know her well enough to know that she is not one of the people of Hispanic or Latino descent that I'm referring to. If she is, she's fooling me. She's doing the work, and she continues to do the work. And that's the thing that I think we're finding out is that they're not monolithic. Even we always say Black people are not monolithic. Neither are neither is the Latino community. They're not monolithic either, and there is classism, and it may approach what you could call racism between the lighter and darker skinned ones in the Latino/Hispanic community. And a lot of the men don't. And I say they don't mess with us, but and another group, our African, either first generation American or immigrants. I'm hearing a lot of chatter that that group went with Trump, and it's tough for me as a Pan Africanist and a Black nationalist because I think about it in terms of the diaspora, and the diaspora is, falling in line with uh, the fascist, um, white supremacist directive. And I know we were indoctrinated here and, miseducated and misinformed. On the mother continent, they were colonized, and the same thing happened by some of the same people. But we have to realize, and I fly red, black, and green. It's in my logo. I got a red, black, and green flag right here. I'm red, black, and green all day, and it's tough for me to process. It's tough for me to process that you're not you, you we I feel like this administration, this incoming administration, has ill intent where black people are concerned, or disregard. Either one is a problem. And if you align yourself with that, I feel like I think I and most black people feel like you're against us, because um, let's just be honest, a lot of the rhetoric is racist. Well, it's all racist. And the reason Kamala Harris lost this election is two things. And I'll tell anybody that, and I don't care. You won't. It'll take a lot of evidence to convince me otherwise. Race and gender. That's the two reasons that she lost. So the men that voted against her, some of them voted against her because they don't feel like women. They have a problem with women. I don't know what happened in their lives. I don't know if it has anything to do with something that happened in their lives, but they have a problem with women, and they buy into the patriarchy. And that word's overused, but they buy into the belief that men are supposed to not lead, because that's not framing it in the right way. They feel like women are not supposed to share in, and this is the important part, share in decision making. They feel like the decisions are always supposed to come from men. And that, in my opinion, comes directly from the chauvinistic nature of the three great Western religions. In all three of them, the woman is subjugated and has no leading role. It's all the people, all the characters in all of the spiritual books. The women have a subordinate role. They play a subordinate role. They're only there to serve the will of the men. And because religion, these spiritual teachings were written by men. And some say men that were not particularly fond of women, and had very little use for women. So listen to that closely, and you can understand what I'm saying. Not trying to disparage any group of people. I'm just saying this is what scholars in the history says. So they wrote it in a way where women were supposed to be subservient, because that's the future they wanted, and people, and we took that up and practiced it. And I'm not saying, you know, be I'm not saying be subservient to women. I'm saying share the power equally. And we've had 46 presidents, all men, mostly all white men, except for Barack Obama, who is of mixed race. His mother was Caucasian. He was raised in Hawaii by his Caucasian grandparents. Um, so never had a female, and Vice President Harris was the first female vice president. But we just were not ready for uh, to see a woman lead, and that's it's just indicative of what we do with society as a whole. We bar groups of people based on white supremacy um, from access to things, and what I think the end result is that we miss out on a lot because intelligence is not exclusive to any ethnic group, gender, class, however you want. It's not specific to a group. It doesn't work like that. Across all ethnic groups and identities, intelligence is about the same. Now there are narratives that people push about certain groups being of higher intelligence, but if you look into it, like they say, Asian people are statistically smarter. You have to look at, how their culture and how where they place education. And then you also have to accept the fact that many of them are not intelligent, and it drives them to a place where they want to harm themselves because they can't live up to the narrative that's being pushed. So it's negative aspects to everything. But yeah, so we know some Hispanics don't mess with us, and that speaking for the black race again, and speaking as a black nationalist and a Pan Africanist, I was operating under the assumption that any melanated people were of African descent, and we had some kinship somewhere. And so, and because of that, I had no problem with you. But if you adopt the political ideology of people who I have identified as my enemy, then I have to consider you my enemy. So, and I have to deal with you as an enemy. And if you're asking me if I'm saying, do I think this incoming administration is an enemy to black people? The answer is emphatically yes. They are definitely not a friend. And I'm gonna play a video. The name of this episode is "We Have No Friends." I'm gonna play a video from the master teacher, Dr. John Henrik Clarke. If you don't know who he is, it's a good time to learn who he is. John John Heinrich Henrik Clarke Clarke. Now that wasn't his name originally. He changed it, but he is a master teacher, and I dare say responsible for a lot of the knowledge that have. I found him later than I would have liked to, but I found him, and that's the important part. And you can find him too. And you know, so and this is the other thing that I think the reason why black people hurt feel hurt by what happened um 2 weeks, 10 days ago, because in the majority of our opinion, um, this represents this represents an affront to our existence, and it says that all of the progress that has been made to treat us as equal and to allow us to fully enjoy our rights as citizens of this country has been undone. A lot of it has been undone or will be undone in very short order. And what we can't understand, what we can't understand is, what have we done to anybody to deserve this treatment? To for anyone to side against us with somebody who says we are not equal, and that we never will be if they have anything to do with it. So, people are dealing with it, and I'm dealing with it myself, and that's what we're dealing with. And you show me, and I challenge anyone. I'll put the call in number up. You can call in right now um, and tell me, show me a time in history when Black people, Nubians, people of African descent in mass rose up with the sole purpose of causing harm to another group of people. Now, I'm not talking about people invading and us defending themselves. I'm talking about Black people leaving where they were, going to other regions and other parts of this world, this planet, and completely upending what they found. Now, that's not to say that Black people didn't travel. Black people, African people were the first people everywhere, according to my research. Um, but when we found what you would consider other people, we didn't destroy the culture. We um, assimilated into it and brought ideas. We Africans, the Africans were always curious about people and the things that they did and why they did them. Never, always, from what I've seen, wanted to peacefully coexist. Never wanted to live in dominance. That we come from a place of abundance where it was enough for everybody. Those the other groups of people, the ones who didn't have anything and thought that they had to dominate and control everything to guarantee their existence. Read the ISIS papers, Dr. Francis Cress Welsing. It'll tell you. The Iceman Inheritance by I can't remember who he's by, but so what do we do now? What do we do now that the unthinkable has happened? Well, it's a good question. What do we do? I have some suggestions, but you know what needs to happen has been told to us time and time again by the master scholars such as Dr. John Henrik Clarke, such as Dr. Amos Wilson, such as um, you know uh, Marcus Garvey, such as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. There's been many of our scholars and activists have told us what we need to do, and what we need to realize is we really have no friends. We have no friends, and that's not to say that you're not uh, able to operate in this society, but it's just to operate with the understanding that nobody really cares about your problems, and you're gonna have to not wait for anybody to save you. You're gonna have to save yourself. And one thing we can do is, we often say Black people operate from crabs in the barrel mentality, and we're our own worst enemy. Well, it turns out that's not exclusive to Black people. That is uh, kind of present in all groups. There's some motivation to look out for yourself. We operate in a system of rugged individuality that's pushed. As Dr. Jerome Fox says, we're taught to um, value things and not people. So as a result, it breeds selfishness. And I have mine. The New York Times, I think I heard someone say the New York Times said that the Venezuelan immigrants who fly into America look down at the ones who walk into America. So self-hatred is not unique to Black people. It's not about your color. It's about your ideology too. I can't remember the professor's name. Mariama. I'm getting bad with names. I'm getting on in years. Um, but she speaks about people being outwardly Black, and a lot of people don't say Black. The Morris brothers don't particularly like the term Black. It's some other groups that don't like the term Black either. The way you refer to yourself should refer to culture and a region on the planet. There's no planet called black. I mean, there's no region called black. There is one called Nubia. There was a place called Nubia. It still exists. It didn't move. They just changed. They just changed the name, as they often do, to confuse us and make us not remember our places of origin. So that's why I say Nubian. But we don't need to quibble over what we call ourselves. We just need to understand the ideology, the politics, and the economics that we need to be aligned on. We don't have to be necessarily aligned on every small detail, but we need to think about how we can um, control the politics of our communities. I don't know that, you know, I was critical of people who voted for Trump. I wasn't really critical. I didn't agree with it, but I didn't really go in and critical of people that voted third party. But you know, you can't really. I guess you can say they're wrong because she uh, Vice President Harris lost and Trump won. But I get it. I get it because look at what more than half the country showed you that you know. Look at what they showed you. They said we want Jim Crow back. We want this, and maybe I'm being, maybe that's hyperbole. Maybe I'm being, I'm just exaggerating. Maybe not. We'll see. We'll see. But I'm not optimistic about. I'm not optimistic about shit that's gonna happen in the incoming administration. And you could say, "Oh, he mad, he crying." I'm not crying. I'm not worried about it. I'm not worried about like I'm not gonna run out and say, "Oh my God," Nope, I'm not gonna do that because I mean the thing we need to do. So yeah, African immigrants. I don't understand how y'all mess with Trump either. But if that's what y'all own, if that's what you own, anybody, just tell me. Just tell me. So I don't waste a lot of time, talking to you and trying to understand, why you feel the way you feel. I don't want to understand. That's on everything. That's on Mary Had a Little Lamb. So I started a petition this week. I put it on my Facebook page. I think I put it on the Gospel Please Facebook page. I put it on my personal page. Because what we got to do now is really resist. It's got to be. We got to go back to the spirit of. Excuse me. We got to go back to the spirit of the Black Power movement and movements before that. And that's the other thing. Because of the way we've been educated in this country, we are of the opinion. All of us are of the opinion that slaves did not. Slaves didn't resist. Black people didn't resist. There's no history of resistance in our community, and nothing could be farther from the truth. There are more than enough instances if you just look for them and not on Google. You may need to read a book or two, and you will find, if you understand the slave trade and how it originated and where it originated and who was in the beginning, which was the Spanish, and they started in South America and what's called South America now, and worked their way up as far as Florida before the English were able to get into the slave trade in a real way. And they had slaves, and there's a history of resistance in Colombia. Look at the Palenques. There's a history of resistance in Brazil. Um, there's a history of resistance in, almost every in Panama. There's a history of resistance in Cuba. I think, the can't remember who the president at the time was during the Cuban Revolution. I want to say Roosevelt. I might be wrong, but in Howard Zinn's book, People's History of the United States, which you probably should read, it'll help you understand what you weren't told in school, and especially if you were educated in the public schools. It will help you. It'll fill in a lot of gaps. I'll put it that way. That's A People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn. Shout out to Howard Zinn. Um, what was I saying? Um, Lost my train of thought. You know what they say about a train, just wait 15 minutes, another one will come by. Um, but yeah, no, the Cuban Revolution. I got it. So the president at the time was saying that the U.S. should be reluctant to get into the Cuban Revolution because they didn't want it to be, or they were fearful that it would become another Haiti, referring to the Haitian Revolution, with Toussaint Louverture and Dessalines and those guys, which was the first independent nation in the Western Hemisphere, and which is also now the poorest nation in the Western Hemisphere because they never forgave them. And you could argue the fact, did they win? Because they've been kept poor because they had to pay France for winning. So ultimately, is it a win? Um, and it's never been self-sustaining, even though it's very mineral rich. That's an interesting thing. It's an interesting subject to study. The history of Haiti and its puppet dictators installed by the Western powers. Um, but yeah, so we resisted in Haiti, we resisted in Panama. I'm a map guy, a geek, um, and I was just looking for the Panama Canal on in Google Maps, and I found a lake called Lake Stephen de Biano or something. And I was like, who is that? And it was a African who revolted, led a revolt, and went to live, um, set up a colony in, what the lake. I can't remember what the lake is. I should have pulled it up. I should have been more prepared. But anyway, his King Stephen. I think it's Bayano, Bayano. Look for it. Look for the lake. It's. I want to say it's what's above Panama. Let me look. Let's take a little trip. We're gonna do like Children's Television Network. I won't say Dora the Explorer. I'll say Children's Television Network. Y'all know maps. I think it's called Bayano Lake. Let me. Yep, Bayano Lake. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen. Just so you know, I ain't making stuff up. Because it's a lot of that going on. Okay, you see, I'm gonna zoom in. This is in Panama. You see this Bayano Lake? Okay, right. I didn't even know about this is so that would be west of Panama City and the state of Panama. And let me see if I can find King Bayano real quick and tell you who he was. King Bayano. All right. So he was an African enslaved by the Portuguese who led the biggest slave revolt of the 16th century in Panama. Captured from the Yoruba community in West Africa, it's been argued that his name means idol. Different tales tell of their revolt in 1552, beginning or this, either on the shipping route or after landing. So yeah, so the point I'm making is, oh, did I share? Okay, here it is. I didn't share it. Sorry, fire the AV guy. So this is Bayano Lake. And this is west of Panama City. Yeah, that's named after a slave who revolted. And then in Mexico, you got El Yanga. And look these people up. In Mexico, you got El Yanga, ELYNYANGA. It's a city called Yanga right now, and it's a statue of him there. He's an African. So the point I'm making, and I'll remove that now. The point I'm making is, let me see. I'm gonna show y'all. Let me see if I can. There's a picture. It's not a picture of Bayano. Let's see. Images. Anyway, you can look it up. I ain't gonna hold you with that. But yeah, there's a younger. So everywhere they took us, we raised hell, and we're gonna have to raise hell now. You in the words of Dead Prez on their second album, I think is Turn Up the Radio, the mixtape. I can't remember. What you gonna tell your grandkids? You punked out? You ain't American dreaming, is you? Well, is you? Shout out to Dead Prez. Yeah, so we just gotta resist. And I'm not saying do anything wild. I'm not saying attempt to do anything like we saw the incoming administration do when they lost the last election. I'm not saying do anything like that, but I'm saying when they come with the bullshit, just say nah. It's that simple, I'm gonna dumb it way down, Not that my listening audience is dumb. I think that they're probably intelligent, probably more intelligent than me. But I'm just saying when they come with the bullshit, just say nah. I prefer not to. What are they gonna do? What are they gonna do? I'm not about it. I'm not with that. And so, I basically called the app I'm making albums now. I basically called the episode We Have No Friends because one of Dr. John Henrik Clarke's more famous lectures is where he says we have no friends. And I'm gonna play just a little bit of it. I'm claiming free use. I think somebody should do that. I don't know. But it's a YouTube video. If they take it off, I don't really care. Hang on. It's Dr. John Henrik Clarke. We have no friends. Yeah. And let's play it.
As for friends, you have had no friend. When they discovered you, they began to prey on you. Now let's look at our relationship with Western Asia, mistakenly called the Middle East. For 3,000 years, our greatest enemies came from Western Asia. They were trying to avenge the fact that they were once African colonies. You read a book called When Egypt Ruled the East, and you get some of the basic information on this. Now, the first visitors to Africa came in the 1700s BC. These were the people who would later be called Hebrews. Now, black people are ticklish on this because black people think that everything in the Bible is true. I question the intelligence of anyone who thinks everything in the Bible is true or supposed to be true. It's allegory, stories told to illustrate a point at a time when there were very few people reading books. And most of what went into the making of the Bible was copied from Egyptian texts. Now, if you want to get so dewy-eyed over the Bible, which is a carbon copy of a carbon copy, why don't you go back and read the original Egyptian text? Then you see where all these stories started from. You see where the story of the Exodus started from. Now, you get so dewy-eyed, you actually think there was an Exodus. These people walked into Africa. Why couldn't they walk out? Why did they have to go by sea? But why did sea at the park? If you read Egyptian literature, you will discover that the whole story of somebody parting the sea started with about 3,000 years before the Hebrew entrance. I should not use the word Hebrew entrance, before the entrance from Western Asia. Now let's get one thing straight, because black people are confused about all religions. Now, I'm not against any religion. I'm a very spiritual human being. I just don't need a preacher to preach no 10 commandments to me when he's a backslider going with some sister, some other man's wife. I'm intelligent enough to pick from the 10th commandment, not commandments anyway, but they were omissions of purity at the great school at Luxor, the great African training school. All right, now, let's get into this Western Asia. I'm saying that the people who came from Western Asia escaping famine did not have any Hebrew faith when they came into Africa. And there's no record of a Hebrew faith before that. Why is it that when they left Africa in the so-called Exodus, they had all three? African culture, an African religion, and an African language. Now look at the origin of the so-called people you now refer to as Jews. And you're mistaken using that reference because the word Jew is of European origin.
This is Dr. John Henrik Clarke. I thought he did say we have no friends, but what he goes on to say, he was talking about a lot of things there, but what he goes on to say is, if you're looking for a friend, look in the mirror, and if you don't see anything friendly, stand back. Then you have no friends. Peace to Dr. John Henrik Clarke. Peace to the Harlem History Club. Peace to Arthur Schomburg. Peace to John Jackson. Peace to all of Dr. Joseph Ben Yochanan. They told us who we were. We seem to have forgotten that fact. And I heard another thing. Oh, this is the other thing. Speaking of Trump, he's not the problem. Let's be honest. The problem is he's a Frankenstein monster that has been created by a political, some people with political goals in mind. And there are at least 74 million people who have no problem with it. So let's just be honest about that. If they try to deflect and explain away a lot of things, but if they don't believe the same things, it's not a deal breaker. So let's just be honest. And I will, that's what I'll say about that in the words of Forrest Gump. Let's see, what else? Yeah, so I was talking about I started a petition, and I started a petition because I was talking about resistance, and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are the current administration until January, and so and the fact that Black people, the vast majority of Black people voted for them, they should, because we voted for VP Harris. VP Harris should do what she can to see that we are protected in any way possible from what may be coming with the incoming administration. And so I asked for a reparations package by executive order, and I asked for that to be signed immediately. They don't need congressional approval for an executive order. And I am going to put that, can I find it real quick? I'm gonna put that in the chat. But yeah, why not? I mean, we did our part. We voted for you. 93% of the women, 80% of the men. That's high. That's almost all. It's more than any other group. So what do we get for those of us who did? What do we get for our vote? And yeah, sign the executive order and proven, not a study, on if it's needed. We know it's needed. Dr. Sandy Darity and I think it's Derek Hamilton put out a white paper. What we get wrong about the racial wealth gap is a scholarly work. It's a white paper. They've done the research. Dr. John Hope Franklin did it before them. And Cobra's been doing it. There's some newer groups that have come along that I may mention later, but right now I won't. But like we know that through the policies of the federal, state, and local governments, and I continue to say this, that Black people specifically have been artificially kept from competing in the marketplace and gaining uh, gaining wealth to pass on to future generations. And so the damage that's done is compounded in each generation. And instead of being able to pass on their inheritance like many in this country do, we all are, each generation is starting at zero. So as they're moving forward, because they're starting out with wealth, we're moving backwards because we're starting at zero and everything is getting more expensive. And the evidence bears this out. This is not anything I'm making up. We can look at it. If you want to look at it, I can tell you where to look. So it's no need to study whether it's been done. It was done through redlining. It was done through urban renewal. It was done through predatory lending practices. It was done through lower pay. It was done through higher interest rates in the financial sector. We have evidence of all of this. We buy homes at a higher interest rate. When we sell them, we get less than fair market value for them. What's the long-term effects of stuff like that over hundreds of years? This is not even slavery. This is after slavery. From 1865 to 2024. What's the effect of that? That's really the only question that needs to be answered. What's the effect of that? And that's what's old. And when I say old people, oh, you think somebody owe you something? Yes. Emphatically. Yes. And then they'll try to shame you. So it's about money. Yeah. What else is it about? What is America about? Calvin Coolidge, the president of America, said the business of America is business. So why you want me to feel like, oh no, please don't give me any money? You don't feel that way. You only feel that way when it's Black people that's getting it. You don't feel that way when you're getting it. Who's more heavily subsidized than the wealthy in this country? And they don't even need it. So and a lot of problems we face in our community are economic problems. Maybe our young men wouldn't feel like they need to protect an area of a city that they don't even own anything in because of the revenue it generates. If they when they graduated from high school, they could have went to work for their daddy at his business, or they could have went to school without going into debt, student loan debt, which is exorbitant, and coming out with loans, and they have to pay they get a job, but most of their income goes to paying their student loan. What if it wasn't an issue about paying for school, and then when they graduate college, their parents could give them money to buy them a starter home and maybe a car, a reliable car. What if that was most Black children's reality? You think you would see the same kind of crime you see? I I venture to say you would. You know, I make the joke all the time that I don't see Bill Gates and Oprah doing drive-bys. If anything, they'll take each other to court. So, you know, there is a such thing as crimes of necessity. Now, I'm not saying drug crime is crimes of necessity, but I don't know the people committing the crime situation either. You know, I don't know how many people they taking care of, or you know, and that's not, you know, and we think Dr. Amos Wilson talks about this. He's another, you know, person I aspire to make proud. I hope is watching on the next plane. I hope I'm headed in the direction that he wanted to see us go. You know, the behaviors in the ghetto are not exclusive to Black people. When the Eastern European immigrants were in the ghettos of New York, they did the same thing. So it's not specific to ethnicity, it's specific to the condition. So if you eliminate the condition, are you going to see the same behavior? You know, but we're too busy worried about um, you know, the toys. We too instant worried about our toys to worry about the fact that if there are people who need, now I'm not saying, you know, if you want to lay up all day and not do nothing, then you should be taken care of. But at the same time, it depends on how you define being taken care of. I'm just of the opinion, and I don't know if it's libertarian, liberal, or whatever, that housing is a right, healthcare is a right, and um, you know, food, whether it mean giving people who don't make enough or can't, for whatever reason, um, can't make enough to properly nourish themselves. There should be, um, there shouldn't be that level of poverty in this country. There shouldn't be. And if you take, you know, I was talking to somebody about this week, and if you take the assistance being given to the top 1% and give it to the bottom 20%, the effect on society as a whole, I just think would be exponentially more than what we see now. Because if you put people in desperate situations, then you got to expect them to act desperate, and desperate people are dangerous. You know, people doing stuff out of desperation because they actually have no other choice. That's danger. That's a dangerous person. And the other thing I say is, you know, I know people in law enforcement. Um, I'm not an anti-cop, you know, F the police guy. I know many people, it may shock you. I'm not, because, you know, as Brother Paul says very astutely, as he always is, if I hear my door get kicked in the middle of the night, I'm not calling nobody other than the police. So why would I say F the police? Now, police that, you know, are involved in the bullshit, yeah, F them. But I'm not saying F all of the police, because the police, they serve a necessary function. And, you know, I attended some defund type uh meetings in here in Durham. And, you know, I was looking at it like they were crazy, to be perfectly honest with me. Like they mean abolish the police. And I just don't see it. Not in the most gun loving country in the world anyway, man. We horses out of the barn now. No, I don't think that's a good idea. Now I do think that crime is big business, and sometimes we we make we take half measures where crime is concerned, because, as I'm saying, if you fund programs, social programs in the way they should be, then I don't think you would see the crime. So you may be able could take some of the funding, especially if you're talking about military type weaponry. Like I don't necessarily like seeing police dressed up like it's Beirut, but sometimes the situation warrants it, and also a show of force goes a long way. So they have to maintain a certain image, like you don't want to mess with them, and I get it because that's probably saving their lives, because it'll make you know the less desperate or mentally ill think twice before doing stuff. So it's kind of like a deterrent. I get that, but I say all that to say I am fearful. I'm fearful for the good people that I know in law enforcement, because we really don't get it. But I'm already seeing it. I'm already seeing people say, "Well, he's been convicted of 34 felonies. We should take that off of the job application." And they're probably right. But what I'm afraid is that's the beginning. What I'm afraid the ending is like people are gonna feel like the law is illegitimate, and if it doesn't apply the same way to everybody, then it doesn't apply to anybody. I don't know what that looks like. I've never seen people in mass have disregard for the law, but that's what we vote. That's what we voted in, because there's some illegal stuff that has gone on for sure. That if it was anybody other than the person it is, they would be underneath the jail. They would be underneath the jail, and you would never hear from them, and they would never have a chance at parole. And that's who we're gonna have leading the country. So, but resist. And I've been talking an hour, so I am going to call it a night. I think I may have. Let me see. When is I'm talking about homecoming? Okay. So yeah, I may do one more episode, but if not, I will see you after the new year. I hope that you stay safe. And like I said, we've always resisted, and we've been through. We don't know what we're about to go through. Nobody can see the future, I don't think. We don't know, but we know that it's probably not going to be what we would like. So can't cry about it. Got to put on our big boy underwear and just say nah. In the words of Rosa Parks, when they asked her to get up out of this seat, nah. Peace and love. Please out.